Can you add strength upon strength? I think that's exactly what the Denver Broncos did. Today's edition of Orange and Blue Today is brought to you by these edge rushers and Jonah Ellis, Mace, a fascinating player who could turn out to be this team's alpha.
Could. The question is, when might that happen? You look over the draft history of third-round edge rushers since 2000, you can't find a rookie edge who came in right away and had a double-digit sack season. So if you're measuring by that and that's your expectation, that's probably beyond what is realistic. Can he eventually develop into an alpha? It all depends on whether that burst that he had, the 4-game burst starting with UCLA last year when he was at Utah, is that reflective of where he can go in the pros, or is it more like his production prior to that point? Because if that stretch showed what he can do in the NFL, then you are looking at somebody who has the ability to become an alpha. And I think that's part of why the Broncos took him, is they looked at the ceiling on Jonah Ellis, which is pretty high.
Yeah, the ceiling is outstanding. It's how to get him there. And that's just more pressure on my guy, Vance Joseph. Like, hey, man, this is on you to get this guy to this alpha, because I actually have a still photo of the other Broncos pass rushers, not named Jonah Ellis, that are in the locker room. And there it is. I mean, they're all kind of the same, right? They're all kind of got the same upside. They've all got kind of the same potential. Ellis could be different. He could be the alpha, Mason. I think they need that guy. That's scary. You always talk about the pucker factor. I think they need that guy with that high pucker factor for opponents.
Well, they need that guy, and that's why going in the draft, I said it was perfectly defensible if the Broncos went edge at 12. Turned out every edge was on the board, including Dallas Turner. I don't think anybody expected Dallas Turner to be there when the Broncos selected at 12. Unfortunately, when you have a pressing need at QB, and in this case, one that it appears they loved in Bo Nix, that has to be the call. That's the priority. When you're just going through the algorithm of positional value, it is quarterback up here. But then that next tier is lockdown corner, pass protecting tackle, edge. Edge being right there. That's why you could have done that. And generally speaking, that's where you're going to find your alphas. So when you get into day 2, it's gambling on upside and seeing, okay, can we develop the rest of this? That's part of why back in 2022, when the Broncos lacked the first round pick after the Russell Wilson trade, end of the second round, the pick they got in the Von Miller deal from the Rams, they rolled the dice on Nick Bonitto, because you looked at the ceiling of him as a pass rusher and, okay, wow, if everything breaks right, this is somebody who could be a double-digit sacker. He still might get there, but for him to make it there, he had to develop at setting the edge, and that is an area in which he is stalled, which is why 2 years in, he's not a starter. Your starters, your first-teamers are Baron Browning and Jonathan Cooper. Bonitto starts when there's an injury, but there's a drop-off, especially against the run. Right. And right now, that limits the production ceiling of Nick Bonitto because he's a specialist.
Well, let's chop it up about Browning and Cooper, because the pick of Ellis is for multiple reasons, Mason. I'll get more into his game and what I like, but also it's like your contracts are going to come up. You're not going to be able to pay both Browning and Cooper, so Ellis is kind of like, all right, he's the next guy up in case you let one of those Buckeyes get away.
Yeah. Do you want to pay both of them? That's another thing. It's a question of analyzing the value. With Jonathan Cooper, who did lead the team in sacks last year and has become their most dependable, you're not talking about a spectacular player. You're talking about a player who is probably the best at capitalizing on what's in front of him and the best run defender in the group. And so that's his value. You put him out there as an every down edge. He's not going to be a huge plus player in pass rush, But if you give him one-on-one, if they're not shading toward him, if somebody can take the pressure off of that side, he absolutely can have the type of season he had last year when he had 8.5 sacks.
Yeah.
So that's the thing with Baron Browning. You know, you get you hear hyperbole about, oh, he's got to bend like Von Miller. Like that's something you've heard in the locker room a few times the last couple of years. I think that is a bridge too far. He's a good pass rusher, no doubt. But then the other thing on him is he hasn't shown the ability to stay healthy. And it's 3 years in a row that there's been some kind of injury for him. Is this just who and what he is as a pro? It's kind of a put up or shut up year coming up for Baron Browning going into year 4. Not just a contract year, but also really showing like, okay, where's his career going to go from here? Is he going to settle in as a rotational type of edge, or does he still have the potential to be an alpha? Like I think it's one of the more intriguing subplots to this Broncos season is what becomes of Baron Browning. Because by drafting Jonah Ellis, you drafted somebody to kind of become what Baron Browning has yet to become.
Right. But we know it's there with Barron. I mean, we've seen it. You and I seen it. We saw it at the Senior Bowl. We saw both Cooper and Browning down there and Quinn Miners. It's like, it's there, Mace. It's just, you got to be healthy to reach that potential. And that's been a stumbling block for Browning. And with Cooper, you've got someone really reliable. The price is probably going to be a little bit lower because of his limited ceiling, but the reliability is something that I would be willing to pay for. With Browning is like, okay, if he gets 12 sacks. I don't want to say like 17. I don't want to get crazy, but if he gets 12 sacks, okay, now he might be priced out. And that's where Ellis comes in.
And the other thing also is if he has that 12 sack type of season after 9.5 sacks, 21 quarterback hits over the last 2 years since he moved to edge from inside, is that a contract year production? Or is it a sign of where he's going to go? And that's what you'll have to evaluate as you get into that process. You know, is he capable of doing this again, or is the better play to roll the dice with Jonah Ellis's development and see where he goes? And so it's on Browning, but it's a little bit on Jonah Ellis as well,
right?
Because if Browning does have that breakthrough season and Jonah Ellis doesn't show the signs of progress, maybe that leads you to swallow hard and make the deal. And then also the other factor is who else is on the market. And then you mentioned Vance Joseph earlier. Who is running the defense? Is it Vance Joseph? Is it Jim Leonard? If Vance Joseph struggles, and in all likelihood, if he struggles, I think they pass the baton internally to Jim Leonard. What would he want?
Right. Who's his guy? Now, who's Sean Payton's guy? And Mace, we do have 2 clips. That's our off-air conversation. One's on Payton's vision for Ellis, and one is on Payton, talking about drafting strength on strength. Let's play one. Which one would you like first?
Let's talk about strength on strength, adding to the room.
Okay. Here's that beautiful bean footage.
You're never afraid to draft on top of your strength. We'll sort that out. It's always a harder position to find in the offseason and in free agency, and so we felt like he was definitely checked the pressure player box, and then we'll sort through that depth as we get to it.
I love that confidence, May. So we'll figure it out, because more talent, more competition is never a bad thing.
Yeah, but at the same time, is it a strength?
That's a question mark. Again, back to the Spider-Man meme. All your guys are kind of the same.
Yeah. How many times have we said it's like a pitching rotation that doesn't have an ace?
Right.
You've got number 2 as your number 1. It's no offense to Jonathan Cooper, but that's kind of skill set where he is. And the data, Broncos, and this includes defensive line, they were 30th in pass rush win rate last year.
Yeah. That's not a strength.
No, and that's why the data told you, and this is, I think, also the eye test would tell you that in terms of how the sacks came and when they came. But the data tells you the Broncos aren't winning enough in those matchups on the edge.
Mhm.
They're not winning enough up front. Now, can what you add inside help what you do on the edge? Absolutely. And that is a reason why John Franklin Myers, you trade for him, and now you've got two pass rushers on the interior in John Franklin Myers and Zach Allen. JFM isn't just going to make things easier for Zach Allen. The two of them collectively have a chance to open things up for guys on the edge. And then the other factor in this is also, and this is not where win rate comes in, this is just overall pass rush production. If you're playing from ahead, that's
Right.
where you're going to get a lot of your sacks. Broncos were in a better situation when it came to playing from ahead and being in games where the pass rush could maintain its effectiveness based on the game flow. Did a much better job last year than in previous years, and you saw some of the results. But pass rush win rate, that's independent of where the games are. It's based on how many opportunities you have, and that's why that number, that 30, you rank 30th in the NFL. I mean, that is such a concern. Your win rate was 34%. To compare that to an average team like Seattle Seahawks, their win rate 16. Or their ranking was 16 and their win rate was 42%. How much more effective is this pass rush if you can just get that to average? 42% win rate rather than 34%.
Right. And that'll be a huge difference. And I hate to be stuck on this, Mace, but that's where it goes back to Vance Joseph. They're giving you the tools. JFM, watch what they do, not what they say. They paid him. No,
he's around for 2025 in all likelihood.
They pay him, right? So it's okay. Okay, VJ, you've got no more excuses. You're not going to be weak against the run, most likely, which is going to allow you to stop the run. Now teams are going to have to pass. Your pass rush has to win. Your offense should be better. We'll see how much better, 24 points a game, whatever the average is with Bo Nix running the show, most likely. But now, Vance Joseph, it's on you and your scheme and the way that you utilize these players, because you're no longer going to have the excuses of, well, they can just run on us all day, or, well, our offense can't do anything, so we're never playing from ahead.
Well, and also, I mean, you look last year. I mean, you went from you improved in scoring per game in terms of where you ranked, right? Because and where you finished, you were 16.9 points a game in 2022. You were dead last. You went up to 21 points a game. For everything that went wrong, you ranked 16th in points per game, I believe. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where they end up finishing. I'm confirming, or 19th. My bad. 19th. Okay, 21 points a game. That should have been good enough if the defense had maintained its level, but unfortunately, the defense didn't maintain its level. Yes, you had that 70-point game that really contributed, that skewed the numbers a bit. But even if you take that out, take that game out, you're allowing 343 points over 16 games. You're still that's still 21 and a half points allowed per game. You're still giving up more than you're putting on the board.
Right. It's still a weakness. It's still a concern. And I'll go back to the Commanders game, Mace. And you and I talked about it after the game. It was like, they ran to get back in. And that's rare in the NFL. Usually you're going to pass to get back in a game. But the Commanders were down, and they just kept running, and it worked. And that exposed a weakness that other teams started to exploit as the season went on. We'll see if guys like JFM clean that up, which then helps your edge.
Well, the other thing also contributing to that, Justin Simmons injured, playing hurt in the second half, and then not playing at all the following week. So that forced Larry and Turner Yell into the lineup, and he certainly struggled. You're hoping that with PJ Locke and Brandon Jones together, that's going to be enough on the back end, and Brandon Jones should be a plus player as you get into providing support. But I mean, is it fair to be concerned about this defense and the effectiveness of the edges and everybody without Justin Simmons cleaning things up on the back end? Absolutely.
Yes.
It's actually a good question to ask right now. Is this defense better personnel-wise than it was in 2023? For example, you don't have Justin Simmons. I think Levi Wallace for Fabian Moreau is basically a wash.
Yeah.
You're hoping Riley Moss can make progress at corner and can be something maybe not special, but something solid, and he can develop there. Your depth is better at edge with Jonah Ellis coming in. Are you better overall on the edge? Have you improved? You've improved the depth, but have you improved the performance? That's something that I don't know the answer to at this point. Inside linebacker, I think you'll do some things better and some things worse, exchanging like Josie Jewell, for Cody Barton. I think you'll lose something against the run, as if you had anything to spare there. But I think you're going to get a player who actually has a chance to cover tight ends, in something that Jewell struggled at. Right. And I think we can say with Malcolm Roach and John Franklin and Myers, you're better on the defensive line. So basically, you're slightly better, but that depends on the degree of the loss of Justin Simmons and how it matters. You could argue the defense is worse. I'd argue that they overall, on balance, slight improvement personnel-wise.
Mm-hmm. How much vision does Sean Payton have for Jonah Ellis? Mace, I will say this. It's very rare when a pass rusher comes into the league with probably about 6 moves. I've counted roughly 6 moves. It actually might be more. Mm-hmm. But you have a rip, a swim, a spin, a chop, speed, power. There's the 6 I've counted for Jonah Ellis. And on top of that, when you mentioned that UCLA game and on that 4-game stretch, he was stacking moves. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by stacking moves is when the first one doesn't work, you immediately go to the second move. And sometimes you actually have a ghost move where you kind of like know it's not going to work, or you've been doing one move consistently and then you know someone's expecting it, so you just go to the second one right away. Ellis is already capable of doing that. Now imagine pro coaching to sharpen that axe, so to speak, of having these 6 pass rushing moves. I like Baron Browning a lot. I think Browning has a ton of potential. He doesn't have 6 moves. Not at all. Cooper is reliable. He's got like a couple of moves. Mm-hmm. You enter with Ellis with this vision. We'll play the Sean Payton clip in a little bit, but it's pretty high vision.
And with Coop, I feel like he's maximizing what he possesses.
Oh, yes, for sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
It is possible we've seen peak Jonathan Cooper.
Yes, and that's pretty good. That's solid,
Yeah.
Good.
Maybe it's like we saw peak Malik Reed, I believe, back in 2020. And it's solid, like you said, it's solid. There's nothing wrong with that. Are you paying for that? There's a price point on Jonathan Cooper that I think you're not going past. I don't know that Jonathan Cooper is a $10 million a year edge.
Right.
I think he to me maybe strikes me as a 3-year, $24 million, $15 million guaranteed edge. Which, for a second contract and the leadership attributes he brings, I think that's a perfectly fair type of deal.
Yes.
Now, Jonah Ellis, that 4-game stretch, 8 sacks, 11 TFLs against UCLA, Oregon State, California, and USC. And this is why you mentioned the stacking moves and how he was doing that in those games, keeping the tackles off balance, finishing. That's the thing. Pressure is good. Finishing is a skill. For example, a sort of the one thing with Bradley Chubb post 2019 ACL injury, he didn't finish for a while as well as he did as a rookie when he was healthy and Von Miller was healthy.
Right.
Jonah Ellis showed that skill in that stretch. So basically, we've seen the ceiling, and the Broncos are gambling that with their coaching, with channeling him, and with some support from an interior rush from JFM and Zach Allen, that he can replicate that. Maybe not 8 sacks in 4 games, but down the line, if you're talking about him being a 12 to 14 sack player, which I think is possible if you can coach him up, I think you can talk about that maybe in 25 and 26. Then there's your alpha. You roll the dice on high upside here, but I also think there's high variance because the production wasn't as consistent over the long haul as you would have liked.
Right. What more can he be? And sacks comes in bunches, so we'll see. But what is Sean Payton's vision? Love that word for Jonah Ellis. Here's what the coach had to say.
Look, you start with one spot with a rookie player, and we do like the versatility. We think there's upside and growth potential. But generally speaking, when you're looking at the draft, there's certain positions that just, all of a sudden, if you start projecting, how does tomorrow look, the next day look, and so a lot of times a pressure player will get a tie if there's too close. In this case, we had two players. He was, a half a round higher, and but I think you start. He's an edge player that plays with energy, effort, all those things that you look for, and real good football makeup, gift character. We'll put a blue tag on some of these guys. He had that.
Yeah, part of that was how with Jonah Ellis, Utah would sometimes move him around, so he'd stand up on the edge, but then you'd move him inside. So maybe a little bit of Carl Mecklenburg for those who recall watching Mech for the Broncos. Now his home's going to be on the edge, but that doesn't mean you can't put him out there and go with a NASCAR type of package and you could have four edges, and on the inside you could have Drew Sanders and Jonah Ellis, or Baron Browning, who was an inside backer as rookie, and Jonah Ellis. There are some things you could do here that are intriguing, but you want him to get one thing right. My hope for the Broncos and Jonah Ellis is that he's playing. I don't want to be sitting there at midseason like we were, for example, with Marvin Mims Jr. and then later on in the season with Riley Moss, once it was clear he was past that core muscle injury, and saying, boy, he's playing like 3 snaps a game. No, he needs to play. You got to find ways for him to get out there. And if part of getting him out there is compensating for the lack of an alpha right now by rotating liberally and coming at an opponent in waves, that's, I think, what you try to do. So you've got the fresher legs as you get to the third and fourth quarter, and hopefully you're ahead and trying to close the team out.
Orange and blue today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason, plenty to get to. Got rookie minicamp coming up this weekend. We will be doing a Saturday show, a post-practice recap, because we'll be there at rookie minicamp. So we're counting you down each and every day, Mace. Can't wait to see you and chop it up. You and me watching football practice, man. That's a happy place for me.
It is a happy place. It's a lot of fun. Sit there and talk, take notes, and And then we have to talk to the guys after, because that's the only locker room access of the off season. So we'll work our way around, catch up with some guys we've talked with before, like Blake Watson.
Yep.
And then get to know some of the new guys as well. So it's always an exciting weekend. It's good to start unwrapping the gifts under the tree.
Yes, and I'll bring up the Shrine Bowl to Jonah Ellis, because what was it? Eric Alco tweeted like they had 4 Shrine Bowl players, including Blake Watson and Jonah Ellis. So that's why we're there. That's why we say OBT is a BFD. And Mace, we appreciate everyone riding along with us. But how can they help us out on YouTube, my friend?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell,
so that you
never miss a vid.
That's right. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey, saying thanks for watching. Stay tuned. And would you please, as always, stay frosty.